Good morning, guys, and welcome back to Basic Fundamentals for the MiG-29. I want to start out by letting everyone know that for those of you who celebrate, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope it's safe and very enjoyable with you and your loved ones. Be careful of the Black Friday madness. Everyone be safe this weekend. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, which honestly doesn't leave out a whole lot, but to figure out, throw that out there anyway. In today's course for the MiG-29, we're going to be going over navigation. Navigation in the MiG's pretty simple. A couple little quirks and things you have to be aware of, but other than that, nothing too crazy. So without further ado, let's get after it. As usual, the first thing we're going to do is go over the controls. So let's go ahead and take a peek at those. First, obviously, we need the navigation modes. By default, when you start the aircraft, you'll be in en route. Okay. So go over real quick on the presses. The initial press of the navigation mode, if it's not already set, will be set to en route, which we'll go over the symbology on the HUD in a minute. En route is the mode that, well, does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to travel through your different waypoints. Press it again, you'll go into return mode, which is the beginning of the ILS guidance, takes you to the beginning of the ILS pattern. And then if you were to press it one more time, it would take you directly to landing mode, which will guide you directly down to the runway. Careful using that one if you're on the wrong side of the runway. You obviously want to make sure that your approach direction is correct, or it'll definitely upset you a bit. Okay, so that covers the navigation modes. Obviously, you want your air brake. We're going to need it. So if you don't have any of these controls, I know I went over a lot of these in the first one, but we'll go over a couple of the necessities just to make sure that you're all on board here. So we're definitely going to want our speed brake. Autopilot real quick, if you guys want to touch on this real quick. So autopilot, pretty simple with the MiG. A or alpha on your keyboard to activate the autopilot system, and then H to hold your altitude. You can also use these left alt 3, left alt 4 altitude holds, or attitude hold is your flight path. So if you want to keep the nose up at a constant 10 degrees, you can hit left alt and 4 and it will lock the nose in that position. Path control, last I am aware, is not enabled, so I wouldn't bother with it. What path control would do is basically sort of works like an autopilot, like you would see in an airliner. It actually flies through your routes for you, but to my knowledge it is not working. I will test that in further depth and confirm, but when you're going through this kind of stuff, if you want to be looking at gauges and things of that nature, the A and H together can be pretty handy, and then left alt and 9 to reset it. Again, the ground collision avoidance, reapproach, things of that nature. I haven't had a chance to test, so I'm not going to go over it. The damper as well, I haven't actually put myself in a position where I felt the need to use it, but what the damper would essentially do is reduce the input on the controls, right? So it would, the flight control surfaces response would be a little bit less, all right? Makes it not so jolty and jittery. But I'm one of those who typically is against using dampers. I want to be able to get comfortable with the aircraft and its full performance. Okay, so moving down here a little bit. All said and done, after we touch down, you may want to be able to open your canopy, so left control Charlie if you don't already have that. The big ones here, the dragging chute, you're going to need that, so pop on your keyboard. This will deploy a chute once we touch down that will bring the aircraft, or help bring the aircraft to a halt. Let's see here, we don't need any of that. Your engine controls, we went over that in the first one, so you should already have those set. The other big one obviously is your landing gear and flaps. So here's the flap controls. Flaps into landing position with left shift and foxtrot, flaps up with left control foxtrot, or you can just toggle it with foxtrot by itself. And obviously the gear, landing gear is going to be a big one. So where is it? It's gear light. Maybe it's under landing gear. The knee board, we're definitely going to want the knee board on this one. So the ones that I would recommend with the knee board, it's got quite a few different controls, so let's just go over what we really need. You can use kilo by itself if you want to just press it. As long as you have kilo held down, the knee board will display. As soon as you let go of the key, the knee board will go away. I don't typically like doing that. When I have it up, I want it up. So if you're going to map it to your HOTAS, I recommend obviously the next page, previous page, and then this one here, right shift and K, and that locks it on and off. Okay, so you just type right shift and keyload to bring it up, and then hit it again to close the knee board down. And then the last one you're going to want, there it is knee board mark current position with right control and kilo. It's a big one. The knee board's extremely handy, especially if you someone who really wants to be able to stay on the correct flight path. You don't want to just be flying to the waypoint. You actually want to fly the path that you designated. Say there may be triggers or something on the path that you need to actually fly through the zone to get credit for that mission, whatever it may be. It can be really handy rather than bouncing around back and forth hoping that you catch it. Here's our landing gear. So left shift and golf to bring it down, left control golf to bring it up, or you can toggle it with golf by itself. And I think that's pretty much, the next waypoint, left control and the tilde key. The tilde on a standard keyboard is just to the left of the number 1 on the number row. And then we're going to also want previous waypoint or airfield, which is left shift and tilde again. Okay, I don't think we need anything else for this particular one. So let's go ahead and take a peek real quick. Obviously, if you haven't already, please get your trim mapped huge. It's the same with the trim reset. You have to trim the living crap out of her. So if you haven't done that, make sure you guys get that done. And then obviously your wheel brake. Wheel brake, you can just hit with the whiskey key on your keyboard. Wheel brake start, left shift and whiskey. I believe the longer you hold it down, the further it depresses. I haven't actually tested it myself as I use an axis on my rudder pedal. So you can do that as well by going into the axis assign. But again, we went through some of this stuff in the initial takeoff tutorial, but here it is right here. Okay, all right, so that pretty much covers all the controls that we're going to need. Let's go ahead and get back into the cockpit and jump after her. So the first thing I'm going to do is unpause real quick. I'm going to bring up our cockpit lights. So let's go ahead and hit Lima on our keyboard here. There we go. Had it already up. There we go. So we'll pause it again. Let's go ahead and start in on the HUD here. Go ahead and lock my camera there. Let's bring our mouse cursor. All right, so first you can see the circle here. The circle here is our flight path marker. Okay, so what this is in relation to is, let's do this. Pause real quick, bring up our knee board. There we go. And actually, let's do one more. So we hit right shift K to bring up our knee board. I'm going to do right control K to mark our location. There we go. So we got everything I need. So you can see here, this caret here is our aircraft. Here's the flight path, right? So that's waypoint 0. We're heading out to waypoint 1. And you can see that we are slightly to the right of the flight path, just as we're seeing here. Okay, so here, remember, there's our aircraft datum. This is actually the aircraft's true directional heading. And then you have here the flight path marker, which is what we need to be going, right? And so you can see the deviation. The flight path is to the left of the aircraft, just as we're seeing here. So hopefully you guys get the gist, though. Okay, so you can tell that we're on the left side. Like I said, just remember that this view is very expanded. Okay, so you're zoomed way out when you're looking at this guy here. All right, where this is going to give you more fine tuning. So we have our flight path marker. The flight path marker gives us both the direction of the flight path, okay, and the altitude indication of it, right? So up here, if we start from moving, let's just move our way around in a circle here. Here is our current airspeed. And then here is the designated airspeed for waypoint 1. So in the mission editor, when we create a waypoint, we can set the speed that the aircraft should be at as well as the altitude. Okay, so here's our current speed, and the speed that was programmed in the mission editor was 610 kilometers per hour. Over here we have our altimeter, right? So we're currently sitting at 1,080 meters above ground level. And we're designated to be at 1219. Okay, so we know that we need to climb, so that's why you see the flight path indicator slightly above the aircraft datum here, okay, because it's indicating that waypoint 1 requires an increase in altitude. Here, forgive me if I call out these characters wrong, guys. I'm so sorry. I finally got the native avionics fixed on the damn thing, so we are going to see everything as the aircraft looks in the real world. Okay, so we will see the Russian characters. If I title these characters incorrectly, I'm going to go by what they look like to me. So for example, if this isn't really called a W, my apologies. Please forgive me. Just going by the best I got here. So the MPW here that we see here is the indication of en route, right? So this is how we know that we are traveling through our waypoints. That's the mode that we're in right now. Later we'll see what the return and landing mode looks like. And then here at the very bottom we have our distance indicator of 35.6 kilometers to waypoint 1. Now what I have not been able to identify is any location that tells me which waypoint is selected. Okay, so that is sort of the hard part. Okay, you got to pay attention to what you have selected. You got to know where you're at. You really do. So pay close attention to that, you know, as you're starting up in the MiG. This little triangle here is a speed deviation indicator. So you can see that we're way behind the line here. What that indicates that we need to speed up dramatically. Okay, and as I speed the aircraft up when we unpause, keep an eye on this and you'll see it as we approach 600 knots, or excuse me, did it again. I've been doing so good. As we approach 600 kilometers per hour, keep an eye on that and you'll see it start to climb back up here. Okay, so unpausing the camera, let's go ahead and come down to our HSI here for a minute, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and lock her in right there. Okay, so actually we're going to start with the ADI. At the ADI, you can see this yellow line here. This is, again, this matches up with the flight path indicator that's up on the HUD. Okay, so you can see that it's got a left deviation as well. Okay, obviously when we're flying, we want it down the true center. If it's to the left or right, that's the direction that you need to turn the aircraft in order to get on the flight path. Okay, one of the things that I do prefer about other aircraft, at least the NATO aircraft that I've gotten to fly here, specifically the F-15 in this particular situation, is these are the Ils markers here if we look down the HSI. Now, one of the nice things in navigation mode, for example in the F-15, is that this solid line here used to move to the left and right of the aircraft or center line based on your position to the flight path up here, right? It doesn't happen in the MiG. Okay, so the knee board is really your best friend in ascertaining your position to the correct flight path, right? So remember, I talked before about flight paths being nothing more than a road. Okay, so the flight path is our road, so we'll go back to our Broadway analogy. This is Broadway. Okay, the knee board is your best tool in the MiG to determine whether or not you're actually on Broadway or if you're traveling next to it. Okay, so long story short, just make sure if you're wondering where your next waypoint is, use your knee board, keep it handy. It's a really big one. Now, if you don't particularly care about staying right on the flight path and you just need to get to a waypoint, you got a buddy calling out a position, you know, at waypoint 2, whatever, or you've got bandits reported in the area of a certain waypoint, this work becomes easy as long as you know what waypoint you've got selected. So you'll select whichever waypoint that's desired. In this case, we're heading to waypoint 1. We have a couple of tools down here that are really handy to use. Now, the green arrow, as you see here, so there's a green one down here and up here. The top of the arrow, okay, is the current heading to get directly to the waypoint. So think of the green arrow as direct flight, okay? So we're not worried about flight paths, we're just flying direct. Okay, that's where you want to use your green arrow, match it up with your heading indicator here on the HSI. If you ever need to know, call out your bearing to the waypoint or from the waypoint. So right now here, if we come down here, our bearing to waypoint 1 is, or from waypoint 1, oh, excuse me, is about 135 degrees, okay? So we have 120, 125, 130, and about 134 degrees, okay? Our bearing, or the waypoint 1's bearing to us, okay, is about 314 degrees that we're seeing right here. Okay, so we're right on path here. We're a little bit, okay, we're a little bit off to the right, which is what we're seeing here. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. The outer bracket here, the outer indicator, is the flight path deviation line. Okay, it's the heading that we should be traveling to get to the waypoint 1. Okay, so the waypoint's programmed direction. So if we would follow this right on path, we would be right on the correct road. We would be heading at 314 degrees. Okay, and we'll see what that looks like here in just a second. I know I'm sort of garbling it here a little bit, but you guys will see it all in action here in just a minute. All right, so there we are, and if we go to our next page on the knee board, you can see where the mark there down there at the bottom is now basically right on path. So now that we're basically on path here, let's go ahead and take a quick pause here. Close enough. There we go. All right, and come down and see what we got. So now you can see that everything is lined up. So we got our bearing to our direct flight to the waypoint is lined up. Our flight path course line is directly lined up to where it's supposed to be. So we're on a heading of 314 degrees and we're heading right for the waypoint. And we can tell that by these two indicators being right on top of each other. And then as we see down here, again, if I unpause real quick, there we go. You can see here that we're right on path. You can see the ADI line right down the center where it's supposed to be, a little slight bank to the right, nothing crazy to worry about, right? So this is the ideal flight, okay? You've got your ADI course lines right where it belongs, so your flight path indicator. You've got your flight path course marker and flight or in waypoint bearing line directly where it's supposed to be, okay? When they're on top of each other, you're heading towards the waypoint, and we're on the correct heading for the waypoint, which would indicate we're on the right path. What will happen here on the next one here is I'm going to pass the waypoint, and you're going to see things sort of deviate quite a bit here. All right, so we're just about ready to pass our waypoint here. Now it will auto advance to the next waypoint. Okay. So now, let's put a mark here. Let's pause and see what we got. So we can see that the flight path marker is telling us obviously that we need to bank to the right. Now if we come down here, you can see, and this is where it gets sort of trickier, so let me go ahead and bring it in. You can see that these two are starting to deviate. Okay? You're going to see as we go further and further, the green arrow is going to start getting further and further away from the flight path course line, okay, from the course line indicator. Okay, and you can already see that up here, especially. You can see it real well up here, how it's no longer right in the center. So these are the ones where you have to sort of make a call and decide what it is that you want to do. Same thing if we look at our ADI, okay, showing a really hard right deviation. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is just fly direct. Okay, I'm going to put us on a direct line to the course that we're looking for, okay, or to the waypoint. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it out, unpause again, and let's bring her around. And keep an eye on the knee board there. I'm going to periodically put a mark here. Pull my speed back a little bit. We're sort of cooking ass there. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is put us on the correct heading. And I'm going to give us a mark. So let's pause. Alright, so if we come down here, you can basically see that our course line indicator shows us on the right course. And we are. Okay, we're about 050 degrees. And you can see that right here when we look up here at the knee board. Okay, we're perfectly parallel to the flight path. Okay, we're just about heading the right direction. But this is where you have to pay attention to the green arrow. Staying on this course right now will not get us to the waypoint. Okay, and you can still see that up here. Okay, you can see our flight path indicator is still hard right. Our ADI indicator, same thing. Okay, reading the same thing as the HUD. And that's because of our bearing line. If we look at our course bearing indicator, you can see that it's still got a 060 bearing. Okay, so it's still off to our right. All right, and it's important to pay attention to that and make sure that you're not just focusing on the course path or course line indicator. Okay, so what we're going to do is come back and continue our turn. So now what I'm going to do is pull the green arrow to our heading indicator. Okay, so if I were to come here now This, let's go ahead and unpause for just a second there. So this now is, we are on a direct course to the waypoint, and you can see that here that now we're not quite as parallel as we were. So this is going to fly directly to waypoint 2. So you can see waypoint 1 here, how it's got the circle here. If I go to the next page on the knee board, okay, we are now on a direct course right to the center of the 2 here. Okay, we're not going to worry about flying the flight path by doing this. Okay, we're just going directly to the waypoint. So it's real handy when you're rendezvousing, or like I said, if there's any particular reason where you need to urgently get to a specific waypoint, that comes in handy. All right, now the tricky part is, and this is where the knee board comes into play, pretty significantly, is the deviation line. Okay, so I'm going to turn the knee board off for a second here, and I'm just going to try to use the flight path indicator on the HUD to get us on course. And I'm going to show you guys what happens. So I'm going to pull our speed back again. I got cooking again. Go ahead and pull some G's here for a minute. Try to slow her down. All right. We're just going to keep her right on the path here. Now I want you guys to see something right away that's already happened. So you can see that we're chasing down the flight path indicator. Look what we got down here. Look what we're doing. Okay, we are flying now directly almost 90 degrees perpendicular to the waypoint flight path. Okay, and even though the ADI shows us right where it wants to be, and the HUD, we're basically right on target. If I unpause, I want to show you guys what's happening with the waypoint. Okay, look what it's doing. Okay, it's putting us directly on a perpendicular path, and this is why I said the knee board comes in pretty critically for this particular portion. Because what's going to happen, well, I'll put it this way, telling you to guess what's going to happen when our aircraft reaches this line. Okay, I'm sure most of you guessed it. It's going to now tell us to pull real hard to the left. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to save that using your knee board. So we're going to use our knee board. We're going to create a few more marks here every few seconds here. As we get closer, I'm actually going to start turning. Because I know by looking at my gauges that I need to make a left turn. Okay, I know what direction the waypoint wants me to go. That's what our indicators here tell us. Okay, but so what I'm going to do is using my knee board, using that Control K. Watching my HSI. Okay, you see how they're right on top of each other? Remember I told you, as long as they're right on top of each other, when you come out of your turn, look at that. You're right where you want to be. Okay, so use your knee boards, use your knee boards, use your knee boards. I cannot tell you how many people I still run into who don't use your knee board. I'm going to say it one more time just for good measure. Use your knee board. Okay, it's there for a reason. Real pilots use them. Now, typically, there would be a whole plethora of math and things like that. You know, you calculate airspeed versus wind speed, things of that nature, traveling at such and such a speed for such and such amount of time, let you know you're at such and such location. The nice thing about the sim is it does all that work for you by simply hitting Control and Kilo, and boom, you get your position. Okay, remember open and bracket, and there's a couple different pages real quick to go over it. You can cycle through each waypoint, and then once you get to a certain point, you get this view, right? So we get a nice outstretched view. Okay, so pretty simple navigation once you are using the tools that are set before you. As promised, and before we run out of gasoline here, let's go ahead and talk about getting her home now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to press number 1 on our keyboard row, and there we go. So got a couple things that are going to happen here. So first, it's going to get you to the initial altitude that's required for entering the pattern. Now, I'm going to throw out a little tidbit here. What I like to do is to keep my altimeter at 2,000 meters above sea level. Okay, when I'm coming in for the approach, because what will happen is when we reach this initial waypoint that it's got us getting to, okay, it's going to have us climb to about 4,000. meters. And then what's going to happen is when you hit that, you're going to have to descend down to 2,000 and then descend again down, I think it's 1,000. Okay, so there's going to be a massive descent once you reach this. So a little forethought and foreplanning. I have found that 2,000 meters above sea level is pretty much unanimous for any of the airfields in the area. Okay, now that's give or take, right? So I mean, take that with a grain of salt, play with it, be ready for it. I would say practice it with what it wants you to do, and that's what we're going to go over tonight. Okay, we're going to follow it the way it sets us to, but I figure I'll throw a little bit of more information involved in there. Here we see this B3B. Again, please forgive me if the identifying that symbology is incorrect. This is the return mode. Okay, when you see this, you are now being guided back to the initial entry for the ILS landing. Okay, you're not being taken quite to the runway yet. You're taken to an initial point where it sets you up for the pattern. And we are 56.1, almost said it again, 56.1 kilometers away. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to unpause. And we still get that same indication down there. You can see it down there. So I'm going to bring her around pretty quickly. Oh, there she is yelling about fuel. So there we go. And slam down. Came a little further than I needed to. I'm going to go ahead and climb out like she wants us to. I'm going to watch my ascent rate. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and climb up to altitude, get us to the waypoint, and then we'll see you guys in just a second. Alright, so just continuing a nice smooth descent. Keeping our speed brakes deployed. Let's go ahead and get some lights on. Didn't think about that. Okay. Alright, now watch our altitude. See that? Okay, so I'm retracting my speed brakes there. So we approached our altitude. Now it wants us to climb up. At this point, like I said, we're not chasing it. It's not critical that you stay right on point with this part. Okay, the only critical part is hitting the ground. That's an important part. Now something else you can do is we're going to go ahead and go to our radio menu with our backslash. Hit F5 for ATC, you can hit F1 for makeup, and we're going to tell them that we're inbound. This will get them to turn on the runway lights, as well as give us the QFE. So if we pause real quick, you can see that our QFE here is 743.78. So we're just looking at the first three, 743. And we come down here to altimeter, and you can see that it's currently set to 760. So what we can do is go into our controls. This one that I almost forgot to tell you guys about. And you can see altimeter pressure decrease and increase. I wouldn't say map these. You can if you have like a plethora of buttons just all over the place and you need something to do with them. Great. But I wouldn't say that you need to. Okay, so just remember it's the right shift minus an equal sign on the number row. Okay, so what we want to do is decrease it to 743. So what we're going to do is come down here, right shift, and the minus sign. And we're just going to keep bringing it down to 743. Okay, so now we've got the correct altimeter setting. All right. Now you can see that we've stepped down again. And you can see that our speed has dramatically reduced. So we're going to go ahead and get our speed down. And to Pylon Productions, if you're watching this, I just got notification of your subscription. Thank you very much for the subscription. And thank you very much to all of you guys. I am blown away by how many subscriptions I have got in the last few days. It is so exciting. I'm just thrilled as hell about it. I really appreciate the awesome comments and the support you guys are giving me. Like, it's it really brings the motivation up. So thank you guys so very much for all of your subscriptions and your support in helping me to grow my channel. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and you guys are making that happen. So thank you. All right, so we're just going to keep on crawling up here. Now, what this is doing at this point is we're coming to the end of the ILS initial. So what's going to happen here is, remember, the runway is behind us. So if you look at our position here, the runway's here. Okay, so what it's going to do here is, once it switches, it's going to have us come back around and set us up to turn in about here. Okay, so this is where we want to start our approach line into the runway. We're going to be landing this way. Okay, we're going to be landing up to the northeast there. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. Visualize that in your head as we make the approach here. So I'm still a little hot. All right, so there we go. Now, as I make the turn, what I like to do here, just because I'm already banking the crap out of it, is I'll drop my landing gear. And you can see that she sinks. I'll put my flaps down. And we're going to add some power so she doesn't drop out of the sky like a rock. Okay, now we've got some symbology changes. So, let's bring us in again. And let's lock our camera up. So you can see the knock down here, NOC. This indicates that we are in landing mode. So this is the critical, this is the part we've all been waiting for. Time to come home. This is the ILS Deviation Circle, this little guy up here. We still have our flight path guideline here, or our flight path indicator. The objective is to get the two directly over the aircraft datum. Okay, so you want the little circle inside the big circle and both circles directly over your datum. Okay, and you're going to see how that sort of works. What I like to do is, I found that flying between them when they're separated like this tends to bring them together a lot closer, but you still have to be aware of where you are. And then here is our distance to touchdown. Okay, so this symbol here indicates that we have picked up the ILS receiver. We're now tracking our position. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to get my camera back. And let's unmark or unpause. There we go. All right. Whoa, girl. What are you doing to me? So there we go. They're just about on top. And there she is. So you can see the runway there in front of us. Now, we're getting a little low. Okay, guys, so I restarted the approach to take a suggestion of one of the viewers to bring up the controls indicator there on the right-hand corner of the screen. In the far left, you'll see the throttle. I want you guys to sort of pay attention here as how much I dance on the throttle. Okay, so I'm going to trim her out, get my 5 degrees, and then everything as much as possible is going to be done with the throttle. So what I'm going to do is slow her down. I'm going to go ahead and get my altitude down here, a little high. Okay. Now we're going to try to trim her out where I want her. But I really want you guys to see how much the throttle really moves. You know, I hope I say your name right. Rudel is one of the subscribers here. You guys can see his comments in the previous video about using the controls indicator. So I want you guys to really see how much of landing is throttle work. Okay, you should never really be off your throttle. It's a constant dance. The same thing with flying in formation. Unless you're the lead plane, you should be constantly on your throttle, up and down, up and down, up and down. So as we get low, we're increasing throttle. As we get high, we're reducing it. But we're really trying to keep it between that 5 and 8 degree trim line. We really don't want to go higher than that as much as possible. Just want to add power until she starts to climb. And when we get her back on track, we bring it back down, but it's constant. So I hope that helps. I thought it was a fabulous suggestion. Had to agree with it wholeheartedly. So I thought about it as I was on the approach. So I wanted to make sure to start it over and take that tip. I thought it was a really good idea. Pulling that nose up. Hitting Papa to deploy the drag chute. Rudders, applying wheel brakes. And we are down. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If there's any questions, please let me know. As usual, leave your comments in the field below. Again, appreciate the comments, appreciate the suggestions. This was a pretty good idea. Really appreciate that. Obviously, here at this point, you can clean up your aircraft. Don't be afraid when using ILS with the MiG-29. Don't be too concerned about runway length. I mean, as you see, we touched down, pretty far down the runway. As I said, the ILS will guide you pretty much to the center of it, right about what we're looking at there is about where the ILS will take you to. But with that drag chute deployed, as you can see there, it really slows the aircraft down rapidly, and we still have quite a bit of space left. I mean, we didn't have any problem. So once you bring the nose wheel down, by the way, let's back up a little bit. Got a little ahead of myself. Drag chute about 270 knots, just as we talked before. You don't want it too much further than that. Otherwise, what happens is it slams the front end down real hard. I've had it damage the nose gear, punch it right up to the underbelly of the aircraft. Wasn't pretty. 270 drag chute. Once you get down to about 200 knots, start applying your wheel brakes, and then she'll come to a screeching halt pretty quick. And then you can just hit pop on your keyboard again, the P key, and it drops the drag chute. All right, guys. Once again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody who's celebrating. For those of you who aren't, I hope you are enjoying the holiday season, and I hope these holidays find you and your family members well and safe. Until next time, guys, this is Overkill. Hit that like and subscribe. See you soon.